Hello, everybody. I'm late, but I am back. I was uh, I was kind of going around and around with Grok 3, and if you've seen any of my uh, past uh, episodes where I've been messing with Grok 3 some, you may understand that I've been trying to use the XAI assistant in kind of beefing up my thumbnails for the show. And the past, I think, three, including tonight's, I've asked it to draw me my thumbnails because obviously I cannot do a very good job myself. Garthog, how's it going? So tonight was no exception. And I asked it to draw me something that it thought might be, I won't say offensive, but disturbing. So then it decided it wanted to uh, change it around. And so what it came up with in my mind was more disturbing than what I had originally asked it for. So I swapped it around a little bit and it ended up drawing close to what I wanted to draw the first time. It's, that's not going to be the topic. We'll touch on it. But tonight's topic is based on not a very happy or enthusiastic subject. It's kind of probably one of the more, I guess, I'll say controversial. And I'm not going to portray it as that, but it might be controversial to a lot of people. But I guess in my mind, it's not about whether you believe in the death penalty or not. It's about people's ability, in my mind, to make a choice. So, my wife has the ability to pick some of the, I'd say, most depressing stories in the news, and then she wants to talk about them. Like, you know, when bad things happen, did you hear about this? Did you hear about that? And it's like, did you hear about, when the puppy got saved? Did you hear about when the kitty cat found a new home? Let's pick something upbeat. But she has a hard time because the downbeat things is what catches a lot of people's eyes. So anyway, she's kind of noticed that in the past month or so, two death row inmates in South Carolina have been executed. And I didn't know this, and I never really give it much thought. But of course, states are allowed to pick or decide or to have a choice on the way that they may carry out the death penalty. Well, in South Carolina, apparently you can do an electric chair, you can do lethal injection, or you can do firing squad. Now, when I was a young tyke, I remember on the news, I didn't care for the news because it wasn't very interesting, but apparently they executed a death row inmate in Utah via a firing squad. And I remember hearing that story. I don't remember if I was watching it or hearing it. I remember the story. And apparently they picked several people. I don't know Gary Gilmore. I don't know their names. There was two actually, and they both chose the same method. And in my mind, that's the wrong method. And it is the firing squad, like I was talking about the story out of Utah. But in Utah, they blindfolded. They had, I want to say more than three. Apparently in South Carolina, they used three volunteers from the staff at the prison. And they have a medical examiner. Oh, the one in, I don't know, in the 70s, what the dude's name was. But like I said, let me finish the Utah story. I've been skipping around. So as I remember it, they had several people in the firing squad, but not everyone had live ammunition. So when they all fired their rifles, none of them knew who had live ammunition and who had the blanks, and therefore supposedly that would alleviate the guilt of the volunteers and firing squad about killing, executing the death row inmate. But apparently in South Carolina, they used 3 volunteers. They all have special rounds that are supposed to be more lethal, I guess. There's a medical professional that puts a target over the heart, and they're within 15 yards, maybe, of the inmate, and then they all fire at the same time, and then the inmate is examined and then pronounced dead. You hope he's pronounced dead. And see, that's the part I wanted to get to. And she reads me some of these, and apparently nobody wants the electric chair, and I don't blame them. If you've ever seen The Green Mile, you would know why. And see, I don't know, I can't remember how many. Garthock says in some states they have 7 shooters and they all have blanks except 1. And I couldn't remember how many in the Utah story, how many there were, how many had blanks. 1 out of 7 is not a good odds. As far as that goes, the number of shots, I would side with South Carolina. Let's give them, and I haven't looked at it. We'll look at it. I believe that all the ones in South Carolina have live rounds, special rounds, and to me that improves the odds of it actually being quick and effective. If you have 1 round that you expect to do the job, and nobody knows who has the 1 round, they all ought to be expert marksmen to make sure that 1 round would be sufficient to execute the prisoner. To me, there's too much room for error, almost as much as it would be maybe for an electric chair. But they get to choose, and at least 1 person in South Carolina chose the firing squad because he didn't want to be electrocuted, and I can understand that. That so many things could go wrong in my mind. He didn't want to have the lethal injection because he felt like he would drown in fluid in his lungs. I don't think that's the way lethal injection works. So he chose the firing squad. So if anybody's ever had any kind of medical procedure done, whether it was a surgery, whether it was a colonoscopy, whether it was, some other type of procedure where they actually knocked you out, that's what I think the lethal injection is. I've had several pets put down, and a lot of vets use like a 2-step procedure. They give 1 injection to help calm the animal, make it relaxed, put it in that, this is kind of nice state. And then they give the 2nd injection, which then takes them from that state to the unconscious state, and it just keeps them putting them further and further and further and further down until, their heart stops beating and, they pass away. So I think most lethal injections are like a 3-step process. But whether it's 2 or 3, at some point the person just goes to sleep and never wakes up. So there's no, I've been, had surgery, so I know that stuff comes on pretty quick. It depends on it sometimes. You might feel a little burning sensation in the arm, uh, but it's just, for like a second, like, I got a little close to the oven or something, that little, and then after that, it's lights out. If I were in a situation where somebody was telling me, we're going to put you to death, here are your 3 choices, man, I'm going to go for lethal injection every time. Every time. No, nothing else uh, would suffice for me. And there's the crux of this show is, why would people in that situation choose anything other than that? Whether you agree with it or not, I just don't understand why. If you were given a choice of the way you were going to be taken out of this world and you knew it was going to happen, then I don't. Now, I don't. Maybe we can look at the different way in the United States, the different ways people are executed. And I'm not going to ask Grok. I'm just going to go straight to Google, because I don't want to have to beat around the bush about. Well, let's just ask it. Let's just ask it and see what it says. Well, it hadn't answered my last question yet. I asked it, while link not shared correctly. I don't understand what that means. So it got rid of all the things that it drew me before. Fewer rate limits, more capabilities, go super. So let's see if we can get over here. Window capture. We're going to look and see what are the choices. What, I guess, is there a, I won't say preferred, but in the United States, what are the different forms all right. As death penalty is primarily administered at the state level as of April 2025, the following methods are authorized in 27 states where the death penalty is legal, along with the federal government and military: lethal injection, execution, gas chamber, I didn't think that was still one, firing squad, hanging. Hanging is still one that's available in the U.S. Hanging, authorized only in New Hampshire as an alternative method if lethal injection is not feasible. Rarely used in modern times, with no recent executions by this method. Okay. Why would lethal injection not be feasible? When would not be feasible? Seems like an awful lot of answer. All right. Lethal injection may be deemed not feasible for the death penalty in states under several circumstances, primarily due to practical, legal, or medical issues. Below are the main reasons. Unavailability of execution drugs. Pharmaceutical companies, many based in Europe or under ethical restrictions, have increasingly refused to supply drugs like sodium thiopental, bromide, or whatever for executions. States like Oklahoma, Texas, and Missouri have faced shortages, forcing them to seek alternative drugs, which may be untested or controversial. Some states have turned to compounding pharmacies, but these sources can be unreliable or produce inconsistent drug qualities. So here's another reason that we ought to have better pharmaceutical productions in the United States and not relying on other countries to provide our medical necessities. If a court rules that a specific lethal injection protocol risks causing cruel and unusual punishment, it may be deemed unconstitutional. For example, cases like Gillespie versus Gross have scrutinized drug protocols. Botched executions, such as those in Oklahoma, Clay Lockton in 2024, Arizona in 2014, where inmates suffered prolonged pain, have led to temporary halts or re-evaluations of protocols. If a state cannot prove its protocol meets constitutional standards, lethal injection may be paused or ruled infeasible. I still don't understand. Because when you're in an operation, the anesthesiologist keeps you riding that wave of consciousness, unconsciousness, but not death. Consciousness, unconsciousness, but not death. So tell me, I don't understand why, unconsciousness, consciousness, unconsciousness. I don't understand why the anesthesiologist can't just put you down and down and down and down until death. I mean, I don't understand why there has to be a specific type of drug that does that. Because I thought, technically they would be overdosing you. Yes, they would. Technically they would be overdosing you. But do you realize that? No, you're unconscious. Could they potentially render you unconscious and then overdose you on insulin, send you into insulin shock, and your body shuts down and you pass away? I mean, you're unconscious. I know they want it to be quick and humane, but you're already unconscious. I don't, the hanging part of it is like, dude, that could probably go really, really wrong, Well, I hear what you're saying, but what was it? The Eighth Amendment to the Constitution is probably, one thing that you can point to, because it's written in the Constitution that it can't be cruel or unusual punishment, and that includes, the method you use for the death penalty. So, just to keep it legal, and I don't know, all the other, considerations aside, they have to, keep it constitutional, or they lose their ability to perform the death penalty legally. Like I said, once you're knocked out, couldn't they? See, I guess you get into a lot into the unusual punishment because my thought goes to, okay, you knock me out, you make an incision in my jugular and you let me bleed out. I don't know what's going on. It's painless. That would be very unusual. So maybe even in those circumstances, they would deem that unconstitutional because it's you know is it cruel? How I don't see how you could be cruel to someone that's not even aware of what's going on. And you know, if the question comes up, well, how do you know they don't know what's going on? If you've ever had a surgery, you know, you know that you didn't know what was going on. You know what I mean? So you wake up and it was like, man, I hurt now, but I didn't feel that when I was knocked out. So that's what, I wouldn't even know if they didn't bring me back, right? So I don't know. But the process for the night show was just the why I don't understand. And I know I can't ask you to explain it to me because you're not a, death row inmate having to choose between, electrocution, lethal injection, or, being shot. So difficulty finding viable veins in an inmate due to drug use, obesity, or medical conditions can complicate or prevent IV administration. There's plenty of obese people, drug users, all kinds of stuff that, can find veins. Lack of trained medical personnel. If you're a state that has lethal injection as a method, you better have at least 3, maybe 5 trained professionals in the whole state to administer those. And I don't understand how you can have the lack of trained personnel when that is a method of execution in your state. I don't understand that. I think it would be tougher. So in hanging, as I understand it, you want to snap the person's neck at the bottom of the drop. That is, you're not choking them to death. That's cruel and unusual. That's what happens when the executioner didn't know what he was doing. If you've ever watched several cowboy movies and, they put a lynch mob, as they called them, they didn't try to tie the knot to snap the neck. They just wanted to cinch tight enough to where the, the offending cowboy's body weight cinched the knot tight enough on his neck to suffocate, choke him to death. That's the reason they call it a lynch mob instead of a, hanging mob. But as I understand it, if that knot's not placed correctly and it doesn't stay in place at the bottom of the drop, it doesn't snap the neck. Is that ooh, to me that'd be a bigger gamble, almost a bigger gamble than the electric chair. I don't know. I can't believe that hanging is still. If I were to have to choose between hanging, electrocution, and the firing squad, that would be tough. That would be really tough in my mind. To decide. It wouldn't be hanging. Nope, 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 nope. Would not be hanging. Uh, hmm, I think, in a situation like that, I don't know, buddy. I'd have to inspect the electric chair. I'd say, yo, warden man, let me go down there and look this thing over. Let's run us a couple of tests and see how well this thing's working before you strap me into that thing. Uh, you know, what happens if the dude in the firing squad, has a sneezing fit or sniffles, or he doesn't squeeze the trigger, he jerks it and it flies off and, you know, hits me in the jaw, or in the shoulder or something stupid. It seems like they could come up with something like they use in livestock, where it's a pneumatic device that just jam, you know what I mean? That just comes out and just, you know, I don't know what they call those things. It's pneumatic and operated. It shoots out the end of the barrel, like a spear. And they kill cattle with this thing. So why don't they have something like that they could strap to your chest if that's where you're going for the heart? All right, a plunge gun, something that you could put on there that you knew, there's not going to be that human variable, that human, I missed a little bit, you know, uh, something that went through the base of the spine, at the base of the skull, to sever your spinal cord. And, why not? Now, see, this sounds even worse, and I don't know how it worked, but would it be worse than hanging to be executed via guillotine? So, in a hanging situation, you're not, as far as I know, you're not sedated, you're not doped up, you're fully aware of what's going on. You're going to feel that trap door if it's still the same way. You feel the trap door drop, right? You're going to feel that moment of, that sensation of, falling, just like you would, when your head rolls off in a basket. I don't know. Guillotine. If I had to choose between hanging and guillotine, I think I would go guillotine. As long as it was, you were looking face down. You wouldn't want to be looking up at the blade. Nope, 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 nope. Face down. So you wouldn't know it was, well, you'd know it was coming. You'd know it was coming because your brain is super, super fast. You would hear the tick of the trigger, the sound of the mechanism releasing the blade. You would hear the blade sliding down because it's got to drop so far. It's got to be so heavy. It's got to drop so far. It's got to be so sharp so that when it does, make contact, it cuts all the way through. It doesn't get hung up. It doesn't stop. It doesn't get cockeyed and drop 3/4 of the way down. It's got to be clean. So, your mind would pick that up, just like I said, the drop into the trap door, your brain would pick that up. I just, you know, there's, you start thinking about individual, how these things happen, and I wonder if you could go on death row and analyze these for each of those inmates and say, okay, knowing what you know now, knowing what's going to happen, knowing this is, you know, inevitable, pretty much inevitable, would you do the crime again? And see, I think that's one of the things that, you know, I won't say supporters, you know, that's supposed to be a deterrent. The death penalty is supposed to be a deterrent to people so they don't commit the crimes that then could be, you know, their sentence could be the death penalty. Right? If you can't do the time, don't do the crime. As that TV show in the 70s used to say. Well, I wish I could remember it. Garthog will help me out here. But it's supposed to be, just like almost any jail sentence, it's supposed to be a deterrent to the person to not do that, to not do the crime. Because you know what the penalties are going to be. You shouldn't do that. And therefore, you know, you don't have to worry about those decisions. So I'm just thinking out loud, if you were to lay these choices out, the pros, you know, the possibilities of the things that could go wrong, would you do this crime again that you were, and I'm sure some of them are going to say, well, you know, I'm not guilty anyway. This is all wrong. You know, I'm innocent. So, some states allow inmates to choose an alternative method, firing squad, or in Utah, or electrocution in Alabama if lethal injection is the default. If an inmate opts for another method, lethal injection is not used. State laws may specify alternative methods if lethal injection is unavailable or impractical, as seen in South Carolina 2021 law reinstating the firing squad due to drug shortages. Okay, well, right there is an answer to one question. South Carolina didn't always have the firing squad as an option. Just in the past 4 years, it says it was reinstated due to drug shortages. So California and Oregon do not have executions. They apparently still have the death penalty, but they won't carry out the executions. So I'm just really surprised that in the United States, hanging is still available. Just seems like there'd be. So Texas and Georgia only use the lethal injection. Federal government primarily uses lethal injection, but retains protocols for alternative methods like the gas chamber or firing squad in specific circumstances. Well, maybe they've changed it. I don't know. Yes, form of execution for the death penalty. Let's see. Decapitation. Saudi Arabia. As of April 2025, Saudi Arabia is the only country known to use decapitation, specifically beheading. I thought isn't that what that is? As a method of execution for the death penalty. Beheading, typically by sword, is a legally sanctioned method of execution, often carried out in public. It is used for serious crimes such as murder, terrorism, drug trafficking, and apostasy, whatever that is. I don't know what that is. I don't even want to look it up because I don't think I want to know. Though the exact application depends on the case and judicial discretion. In 2022, Saudi Arabia executed 196 people, including a mass execution of 81 individuals in March, with beheading among the methods used. The number of executions rose to 303 in 2024, the highest recorded, with beheading remaining a primary method. The practice has drawn international criticism for its brutality, lack of transparency, and in use in cases involving nonviolent crimes for political dissent. Historically, decapitation was used in various countries such as France, the guillotine until 1977, Nazi Germany, guillotine or axe, and the Tang Dynasty in China, strangulation and decapitation. Wow, France used the guillotine until 1977. No other country currently lists decapitation as an active method of execution in 2025. For example, Iran uses hanging or shooting, with stoning and crucifixion permitted but rarely applied. China, the world's leading executioner, primarily uses lethal injection or shooting. Qatar and Yemen have laws allowing beheading, but there's no evidence of its use in recent years. Executions are typically by firing squad or hanging. Autophagy is formal abandonment or rejection of a religious belief, often involving a total defection from a faith or set of principles. It is the act of turning away from a belief system. Where was it? It's used for serious crimes. Okay. Oh my gosh. So in Saudi Arabia, if you turn away from the religion, you could be executed. Hmm. Hmm. That is very, it just still blows my mind. I don't, I don't know why you would use a sword. I mean, you see these things in movies, and it's just hard to believe that it would still be in practice in, what do they call it? A developed country? Is that what they say, that There's third world, is it first world, second world, developed, whatever, country. I would think Saudi Arabia is, you know, pretty high up on the list of, you know, modernized countries. I don't know. You'd have to be a really good wood chopper to do it right. I don't know. That's just really bizarre. Really bizarre. And to do it in public still. To do it in public. I don't know. I wonder why it went from 196 to 303 in 2 years. In 2 years. Why did it go up so much? It didn't double, but it made a significant jump. Significant jump. I wonder if Grok would know. I wonder if it would tell me. Let's just see what it says. Oh, it heard me talking. She's locked up. Nope, okay. What caused the rise in executions in Saudi Arabia? Saudi. S-A-U Arabia. What caused the rise in executions in Saudi Arabia between 2022 and 2024? Let's see what it says. Is it going to give me one of these things where it says it's unable to reply, try later? Like one of those 8-ball things. You shake it, shake it, shake it, turn it up, and then read it, and it says unsure, ask later. Well, I've never seen it take so long, really. Hmm. Well, if it doesn't like the subject matter, it always tells you that it's moderated. And when I asked it why it was moderated, it just said that it was subject matter that could be deemed as, I don't know, I can't remember exactly what it said, but then, but then it, instead of just giving me the only thing I wanted was like a 3-answer test question. And the question was, which would you choose? 1, firing squad. 2, lethal injection. 3, electrocution or electric chair. And at first, it gave me a couple of things, and then when I tried to refine it because it wasn't doing it correctly, then that's when it started saying that it was moderated. And then when I asked it when it was moderated, that's when it said, it may be offensive, or it may be controversial, it may be this or that. And, all right. So apparently we'd lost connection to Grok. Let's see what it says here. Well, did we lose it altogether? All right. Well, it didn't do. I'm asking it again. I don't know what it's doing. She's spinning her wheels. Yeah, if we don't get an answer this time, I'm just wondering, did they have, a doubling or, an increase in, you know, murders or thefts or caught terrorists or more people leaving the religious order or something? All right. So it's not going to give it back to me. Oh, well. That's okay. Que sera, sera, right? It did pretty good for a while. Uh-oh. Something's come up. No, go away. All right. So this wasn't the normal lighthearted type of, show, but, I thought it might be worth looking into. Not so much is it right to do, is it wrong to do, but, the person's process of, thinking about these things, and then what would they what would they choose? How do they come about these things? How did they come about the fact that I'd rather be executed via firing squad than lethal injection? Uh, do you think, you know, I would probably be, they'd probably just like shoot me on the spot because they'd be tired of the silly questions I would ask to try to make up my mind. Of course, I guess in a way, I guess it's human nature to think, even though you might be on death row, if you know anything about death row inmates, how long they're actually awaiting, you know, the final execution of their sentence, the final outcome of their sentence, we could say, from the time they're convicted and sentenced. Could be 30 or 40 years. Some of them die of natural causes before they're actually executed. Is that good or bad? I mean, you ask different people, you'll get different answers, but that's, typically it's a long time. So, you might get there in the first 10 years and you think, I want to be executed via electric chair. And then you realize 5 years later, well, they haven't turned on an electric chair in 20 years. It may not work. It's just like, oh, God, let me know. Tell me a little bit more about this lethal injection thing. And, you'd think by the time you got to that point, you would know what your last meal was going to be and the way you wanted to be executed. So, I don't know. And how long do they, do they give you a full night? Like, he going to execute you tomorrow at 8 a.m., so your final meal is like supper the night before? What happens if you wake up at 2 o'clock in the morning? Man, I'm hungry. I don't know. So, like I said, not the normal ideas, normal fare, but it came to my mind about how would you ever choose that? Which one would you choose? What would I choose? So I guess the best answer is to not put yourself in a position where you have to choose. And would you want to just get it over with? You know? Or would you want to spend 20, 25 years, 30 years on death row in prison waiting on maybe the chance that the governor would stay your execution, or they could find something that was gone wrong, something that was done wrong, and get you off the death penalty? Or would you just say, and I guess a lot of that comes back to you saying, I know I did what I did, and accepting responsibility for that, and just say, look, let's get this over with. Let's just do it. So, I don't know. Anyway, if you made it this far, I'm sorry. If you found the topic interesting, you think I'm an idiot, let me know. Leave me a comment. Like, subscribe to the channel. Uh, turn the notification bell on so when I come up with another stupid idea for a show, you'll be maybe the first or second to know about it. And like I said, leave me a comment. Let me know what's going on. And if you think you got the courage to call in, 423-482-1413 is the number. Next time, give me a call and I will, try to answer you. We'll try to work that out. You can give me your live opinion on stuff. All right. Let's see. This button here, and then the next button. All right. Hope y'all have a good Easter, good weekend. It's supposed to be nice and sunny. Get out there and mow some yards, pick some flowers, hide some Easter eggs, eat some chocolate bunnies. I like me some chocolate bunnies. That's going to be